Sarah smirked as she slipped her phone back into her purse, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the leather. "You're being paranoid, babe, he's just a friend." Her tone was light, dismissive, the same way she always spoke when she thought she had the upper hand. I nodded, my expression carefully neutral. "Yeah, of course," I said. Let her believe that. I'd learned long ago that accusations were pointless. She thrived on the drama, twisting words, making me feel like I was the crazy one. No, I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontation gave people time to come up with excuses, and I didn't need excuses, I needed proof. Sarah leaned across the table, her perfume laced with jasmine and something synthetic, a scent I once found intoxicating, now nauseating. She kissed me softly on the cheek, the way you do when you're trying to keep someone comfortable in their ignorance. "I'm heading out with the girls later," she said, reaching for her wine glass. I took a slow sip of my own drink and watched her, but my mind was elsewhere. She had a backup plan, and she thought I didn't know. I waited until she went to shower before reaching for her phone. It was face down on the counter, locked. But that didn't matter. I wasn't the kind of guy who needed to snoop. I didn't have to. Sarah had a habit, a weakness. She always underestimated me. Instead of fighting about it, instead of playing the fool, I picked up my own phone and opened the message I had already prepared. One simple text. No drama, no accusations, just a subtle, calculated play. "Ethan, hey, just a heads up, she told me she'd leave me for someone better. Hope that's not you." I hovered over the send button for a moment, then tapped it. The message was for Tyler, Sarah's friend. The guy she texted late at night, the one she called when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the one she was grooming for when, not if, she decided to leave. I leaned back against the kitchen counter and set my phone down. No rush, no anxiety. I was a patient man. Now I just had to wait. 2 hours later, Tyler blocked her first. I didn't say a word to Sarah that night. She hummed to herself as she got ready, slipping into a sleek black dress that she knew turned heads. She checked her reflection, tilting her chin up slightly as she adjusted her earrings. Confident. Untouchable. I watched her from the couch, my face unreadable. She had no idea. The moment she stepped out the door, I picked up my phone. Tyler had already seen my message. That much was obvious. What mattered now was how he'd react. I opened our conversation. No response, but his silence was telling. A man like Tyler, smooth, self-assured, never the type to hesitate, was suddenly quiet. That meant he was thinking, weighing his options. I gave him time. Sarah had no clue that she was standing on a trapdoor, and I wasn't about to rush the moment it opened beneath her. I had waited this long, letting her think she had control. I could wait a little longer. An hour passed, then another. Finally, my phone buzzed. Tyler, what exactly did she say? That was all I needed. If he had nothing to worry about, if he truly believed he was the one in charge, he wouldn't have asked. He would have laughed it off. But instead he wanted details. I smirked. I typed my response carefully, deliberately. "Ethan, not much, just that she's been keeping me around until she finds something better." Not my words. Hers. I let that sit, no over-explanation, no begging him to believe me, just the bare truth, gift wrapped in casual indifference. Minutes passed. I imagined him sitting there, his confidence cracking, replaying conversations he'd had with Sarah. Had she ever slipped? Had she hinted at something he ignored? Then came the follow-up. "Tyler, you got proof?" I did. More than enough. But I didn't need to show him everything. People don't need mountains of evidence to believe something. They just need to start doubting. I scrolled through my phone, found a single screenshot. It was subtle, a conversation where Sarah had been venting, half flirting, half complaining, about how she was figuring things out and keeping her options open. No explicit mention of him, but enough to plant the seed. I sent it. Read at 11:37 p.m. No reply. That was all the confirmation I needed. Tyler wasn't the type to entertain a woman who played games. He was a man who liked things simple, drama-free, casual, fun. And Sarah had just turned into the one thing he couldn't stand. I could picture him frowning at his phone, irritation settling in. He wouldn't explode, that wasn't his style, but he would cut her off without hesitation. That was what men like him did, and that was exactly what I was counting on. At 12:15 a.m., Sarah came home. She was in a good mood, humming again, kicking off her heels as she tossed her purse onto the counter. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out absent-mindedly, checking the screen. I watched from my seat. At first, she didn't react. Then her fingers tapped against the glass again, faster this time. A pause. A furrow of her brow. She tried again. Then, like clockwork, the shift happened. The moment she realized she was blocked. She stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. Then she tried another method, opening a different app, checking for his profile. Nothing. Tyler was gone. Well, she didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I saw the exact moment panic flickered across her face. She took a slow breath, schooling her expression, but her fingers tightened around her phone. She thought she had time. She thought she had control. But for the first time, she was the one caught off guard, and I sat there, sipping my drink, enjoying the silence. The first domino had fallen. Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, her phone still in her hand. She wasn't humming anymore. I could see her processing, trying to make sense of what just happened. She tapped the screen a few more times, then switched to another app. I knew she was looking for Tyler, searching for a way to reach him. Maybe she checked if he was online somewhere else. Maybe she sent a message that would never be delivered. It didn't matter. I leaned back, keeping my expression neutral as I scrolled on my own phone, pretending I wasn't paying attention. But I could feel it in the air, the tension, the uncertainty creeping in. Sarah wasn't used to this. She had always been the one in control, the one making the moves. She always had an escape route, a safety net, and now for the first time she was realizing it was gone. Minutes passed. She locked her phone and tossed it onto the table with a little more force than necessary. Then she got up, disappearing into the bedroom without a word. I let her sit with it. The next morning I woke up to the sound of her typing. I stayed still, my eyes closed, pretending to sleep. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, sending message after message. She was trying again. She didn't bring it up over breakfast. She acted normal, as if nothing had changed. But I could tell by the way she kept glancing at her phone, the way her lips pressed together, that she was waiting for something. A reply, a call, a second chance. None came. By the afternoon she was restless. She started scrolling through old conversations, her thumb flicking up and down the screen. I knew exactly what she was doing, trying to figure out what went wrong. Had she said something? Had she made a mistake? She wouldn't find an answer. Tyler was the type of man who didn't believe in explanations. He had already moved on. It was nearly evening when she finally cracked. She sighed dramatically and sat next to me, curling her legs up on the couch. She leaned against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. The same move she always used when she wanted me to soften up. Then, she said, dragging out my name just slightly, something weird happened. I kept my face blank. Oh yeah? Yeah, she hesitated, as if debating how much to reveal. Tyler blocked me. I frowned just enough to seem convincingly surprised. Blocked you? I thought he was just a friend. She let out a little laugh, but it didn't sound real. He is. He was. I don't know. It's just weird. I shrugged, taking a sip of my drink. Maybe he realized something you didn't. Sarah sat up a little straighter. What do you mean? I turned my head, finally looking her in the eye. I let a small smirk play at the corner of my lips. Maybe he figured out he was just a backup plan. She didn't say anything. For the first time, she didn't have a response. In that silence, it was the sweetest part of all. Sarah didn't reply right away. She just sat there, staring at me, her lips slightly parted as if she was about to say something but couldn't find the words. I could see the wheels turning in her head, desperately trying to piece together what had happened. She wasn't used to this. She was used to having a reason, an explanation, something to blame other than herself. But this was new. That's not true, she finally said, shaking her head as if she were convincing herself more than me. Tyler and I were just friends. I don't know why he would do this. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my expression calm, detached. Maybe he realized something you didn't want him to. Sarah let out a forced laugh, but there was no humor in it. Oh, come on, Ethan. You sound ridiculous. Do I? I tilted my head, watching her carefully. Then why are you so bothered? She stiffened just slightly, but enough for me to notice. Her fingers curled around the edge of her phone, gripping it tighter than necessary. I'm not bothered, it's just weird, that's all, she said quickly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. He and I have known each other for a while, and I just think it's odd that he would suddenly cut me off like that. I nodded slowly, letting her words hang in the air. I wanted her to keep talking, to keep unraveling herself. Sarah thrived on control. She knew how to manipulate situations, how to spin things in her favor, how to make sure she was always the one with the upper hand. But she was slipping now, grasping at straws. And the best part? She didn't even realize that I was the one who had pulled the rug out from under her. You think I should text him again? She asked after a moment, her voice laced with uncertainty. I shrugged, taking another sip of my drink. You could try. But if he blocked you, I doubt he wants to talk. Sarah frowned, tapping her nails against the side of her phone. Maybe I'll call him from another number. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That desperate, huh? Her head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. I'm not desperate. I just don't like loose ends. Loose ends. That was what Tyler had become to her. Not a real person, not a man with feelings, but a failed option. A door that had suddenly slammed shut before she could decide whether she wanted to walk through it. Sarah exhaled sharply and stood up, pacing the room. This doesn't make sense, she muttered to herself, as if saying it out loud would change anything. Something must have happened. She was right. Something had happened. She just had no idea that I was the one who made it happen. And that made it all the more satisfying. Sarah spent the next few hours in quiet frustration, her phone glued to her hand. She wasn't the type to give up easily, especially not when she felt like she was losing control. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Tyler had always been responsive before, always available when she needed him, and now, without warning, he had disappeared. She opened her mouth a few times throughout the evening like she wanted to bring it up again, but she stopped herself each time. It was clear she didn't want to give me the satisfaction of knowing how much this was bothering her. That was fine by me. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. Later that night, as we lay in bed, she was still restless. She kept checking her phone, pretending to scroll through social media, but I knew exactly what she was doing, waiting for a miracle. Then, around midnight, she gave in. She sat up abruptly, grabbed her phone and started typing. I could hear the taps of her fingers moving quickly across the screen. I didn't have to see it to know she was drafting a message to Tyler, probably something casual, something that wouldn't make her seem too desperate. She hit send and stared at the screen, waiting. A minute passed, then 5, then 10, nothing. She exhaled sharply and locked her phone, setting it down a little too forcefully on the nightstand. The irritation was practically radiating off her, but she still didn't say a word to me. She refused to admit she had lost. I turned over and pretended to be half asleep, letting the silence stretch between us. Eventually she lay back down too, though I could tell sleep was the last thing on her mind. The next morning I woke up early and went about my usual routine. Sarah, however, was moving slower than usual. Her energy was different. Gone was the confident, carefree woman who always had a plan. She was distracted, her mind somewhere else. I let her stew in it. By the time she was getting ready for work, she finally cracked. "This is so weird," she muttered, standing in front of the mirror as she fixed her hair. "Tyler still hasn't answered me." I looked up from my coffee, feigning mild interest. "Oh?" She sighed, grabbing her phone again. "Yeah, I sent him a message last night and he hasn't even read it. He's never done that before." I took a slow sip of my drink. Maybe he figured something out. Sarah turned to face me, eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean by that?" I shrugged, setting my cup down. "Just that maybe he realized he wasn't as special as he thought he was?" She opened her mouth to argue, but then her phone vibrated. Her eyes lit up, hope flashing across her face as she scrambled to check the screen. But just as quickly her expression dropped. It wasn't Tyler, it was a system notification, one that confirmed what she was already dreading. This user is no longer available. Tyler hadn't just blocked her on one platform. He had wiped her out completely. No contact, no explanation, no second chances. Sarah stared at the screen, her fingers tightening around the device. I stood up, stretching slightly before grabbing my keys. As I passed her, I leaned in just enough for her to hear me. "Looks like your backup plan just ran out." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need to. I walked out the door, leaving her standing there, her illusion of control finally shattered. Checkmate.